Good afternoon, everyone. We are still waiting for some more to join us, so please bear with us for a while. We'll try to start as soon as possible. Thank you. Can everybody hear?
Yes, can.
Thank
Loud
you.
and clear. Loud and clear.
Thank you. Thank you. So somebody commented that they cannot hear.
Satu, dua, tiga, go.
Hi, Roslyn.
Hi.
Hello, very good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Please bear with us for a while as we still are meeting people. We have a huge number registered for this talk, over 300. So we are still meeting people now.
Kejap. Nak saya punya phone. Dia buka hai.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome all of you to this afternoon Brownback talk on COVID-19 pandemic and online teaching learning, challenges and opportunity for educators, parents, students, and institutions, organized by Sarawak Development Institute and supported by New Dimension through Conference X. Our speaker today is Associate Professor Dr. Johari Abdullah, lecturer at the Faculty of Computer Science and Information Technology, UNIMAS. For everyone's information, SDI's Brownback series is an informal sharing sessions by SDI members on pertinent issues and concerns. So online teaching learning is one of the new norms that all of us have to adapt to due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And based on the response to today's talk, I believe this is an issue that have affected all of us. I believe everyone is now familiar with Zoom sessions, but I would just like to go very briefly with the housekeeping rules, which is please make sure your microphone is muted all the time. And you may use the chat function to raise any questions or sharings that you would like to do. I believe Dr. Johari has shared there is another ways that you can share your sharings and questions, which is through the Jamboard. So information on this is available at the chat function. So Dr. Johari has shared the link through at the chat box. So another thing is you may raise questions during the Q&A sessions later on. You may use the raise hand button next to your name. So since we have quite a number of participants, so you can just unmute your microphones and you let me know that you would like to ask the questions directly or do the sharing session, do the sharing personally. We're also going to conduct a poll during this talk to complement the topics. So I would like to start the poll with the first questions. So if I have, may I alert Clarence? So this is the first poll. So please I would like to seek everybody's support to choose which role or category that you represent today. So let's take a few seconds. So either you're a teacher, or your parents, or your students. Actually, we only have 3 categories. These are actually students. The number 3 and number 4 actually is for students. Sorry about that. So we maybe take another few seconds more. All right, so this is mostly with us today, teachers, educators, lecturers. So second is parents, and we also have about 11%, 13%, sorry, students with us today. All right, okay, with that, I will hand over the sessions now to Dr. Johari. Dr. Johari, if you're ready, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Rosalind. Hold on, let me share my screen. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon. Thank you, Rosalind, as the MC for the session. And I would like to welcome everybody from the current list of participants. We have 246 and a few still coming in. I'd like to welcome everybody to the session today, the first Brownback Talk series from SDI for 2021. My name is Johari, and I would like to first of all say thank you to SDI for giving me the opportunity to probably share this topic today with all of you. Let's go straight to the talk slide. Now, before I proceed with the talk, as Rosalind mentioned just now, there are a few ways for you to share your thoughts, your comments, and your question. First and foremost, you can ask the question through the chat box. The MC and also the team from SDI will compile the question, and we can actually select a few questions at the end of the talk session. And you can also unmute your mic later. I think the Clarence and the team will probably allow that at the end of the session. And I also would like you to probably try this. This is something that we use currently regularly in our online session, either using Padlet or using Mentimeter, and this one is Google Jamboard. So what you can do from the link that I have shared in the chat box, you can access this board. And what we would like you to do is to probably use the color coded. You can use the sticky note on the left hand side. In the middle there is something called sticky note. If you click there, you can see the pop-up and you can select the color. So maybe to make managing the board easier, you can use color coding as what we suggested. Yellow is to share your comments and experience. Green is to probably provide your suggestion about the topic that we are discussing today. And you can use pink for question. Feel free to post the question, the comments, and the experience throughout the talk. Maybe just to be careful, don't delete someone else's comment. I think everybody have access to everybody comments, so you can either edit or you can add and you can delete. I can see Stephen is actually drawing there. Okay, you can draw that, but don't try to scribble on top of other people's question and so on. So just play around with it, and we'll see how it goes at the end of the session. Someone mentioned about the link to the slide. We'll check again, don't worry. Either I shared at the end of the talk, or you can also look at the SDI website, maybe later today, to download the slides. So the topic for discussion today is COVID-19 and online teaching, learning, challenges, opportunities for educators, parents, students, and institutions. Based on the list of participants that we have, which is a huge number, usually for SDI Brown Bag Talk, the number is within the 10s and 20s, but I think this is probably the first time that we have numbers within the hundreds. So the conclusion is, I guess this topic is very close to our heart, either as educators, as the poll showed just now. I think the majority of the participants for today's talk are from the educators. Then we also, I think, wearing the hat of the parents. We have students as our children. And I'm sure there are some students from colleges and university that attend the talk as well. And of course, institution as well. I'm dividing the talk into 3 chapters or 3 sections. First is probably the introduction about a few things about the scene of education in Malaysia during the COVID-19 period. And then we look at the challenges. This is probably the one that is very close to our heart and still ongoing. And maybe the last one is something that we can work together to come up with suggestions so that SDI can pick up on this and maybe do a bit of research or come up with a policy paper that can be presented to the policymakers. A bit about myself and disclaimer for this talk. My name is Johari Abdullah. I'm currently the senior lecturer at the Faculty of Computer Science and IT, UNIMAS. I've been with UNIMAS for the past 20 years. So I joined UNIMAS back in the year 2000, so very easy to remember. This is my 20th year with UNIMAS. First and foremost, my background is on computer science in general, specifically on network technology and network computing, deep learning, web-based, open source, very technical, I would say. Now, the disclaimer that I would like to make, I'm not an expert in pedagogy. So the teaching and learning, especially at the school level, is not my forte and it's not my, I would say, strength. I'm sharing the opinion for, as an educator from my own experience as a lecturer at UNIMAS at the level of institution of higher learning. I share my points and my opinion as the father for 2 girls, one at Form 1 and one at Form 3. And then my 2 sisters are also educators themselves. My younger sister is a teacher at Form 5 and Form 6. And my elder sister is actually a preschool teacher. I think that is probably the toughest job on earth when you have to deal with 40 children at the age of 6 years old and 7 years old. So I salute her for that. So probably I get some glimpse of what they are going through during this pandemic by talking to them and so on. So I really would like to get you to share your own thoughts and opinion and your experience during this past 1 year, either from the educator point of view, from parents' point of view, from teachers' point of view, from the institution point of view, because I see some of the link is actually representing government departments and ministry. So let's talk about a few things as a preamble to the challenges and the opportunities. So from the picture that you see, this one is definitely prior to COVID-19. This was back in 2018, actually. The article was talking about a few areas of concern with regards to our education system. So happy faces, no restriction, and so on. Very interesting picture. This is an exhibition outside UNICEF building in New York, if I'm not mistaken. And this signifies 168 million children throughout the world that has not been able to attend a formal school session face-to-face across the world. So in most countries, they use the same strategy not to allow children to go to school as a measure to curb the spread of the COVID-19. So let's look at our education system, and please correct me if I made any mistake. I know some of you are from the education sector, teachers and so on. So if you look at the structure of our education system, we can divide that into several levels. From the left-hand side is early education, kindergarten, TASCA, and so on, up to preschool, year 6 and year 5. Sorry, 6 years old and 5 years old. And they are actually offered by government sectors, by the private kindy and so on. And they are also special needs preschool and special needs kindies throughout the country as well. Now, if you look at the primary education, you can split that into two tiers. One is the lower primary, standard 1 to standard 3. And then we have the upper primary from standard 4 to standard 6. Secondary, we also can split that into two levels, the lower secondary form 1 to form 3, and also the upper secondary form 4 and form 5. And the next one, some of the school leavers will go for post-secondary. We have form 6, I think now it's 1.5 years. We have matriculation, we have foundation, we have Asasi. This one is usually at university level, and so on. We also have diplomas at polytechnic, at colleges, universities. And the last level is, of course, the higher education. We have local IPTA, we have local IPTS. There are some that went abroad for study and so on. So these are the ecosystem of our education system in Malaysia. So this is another way to look at it. This one is from a paper from Hamdan Haiza et al. As what I mentioned just now, we can split the education system into several levels or tiers, whereby the focus, of course, is different at primary, secondary, and also at tertiary studies. Those that are familiar with the ministry level, maybe you notice that at some point during the past 10 to 15 years, either we have one ministry that handle both, or they are split into two ministries. So you can have either in the Ministry of Education handling primary schools, secondary schools, and you can have the Ministry of Higher Education that handle the tertiary studies. 3 years back, they were combined, and after that split again, usually for various reasons. Some school of thought saying that they should belong under the same ministry so that there is continuation from the school level to the tertiary level. Some believe they should be split because one ministry is too big to handle both levels. So let's look what happened, COVID-19. Rewind back the timeline. Today is 30th of March 2021. The first MCO was 18th of March last year, so just over the year whereby we had our life turn around. I think most of us 360 degrees. A lot of things changed actually, either at the personal level, either at our work environment, whether it's related to ourselves, to our children, and so on. So the term new norm is the term being used across the board with regards to economics, with regards to our personal life, with regards to works. So when it's new norm, we can become the normal norms. This one just a bit of comparison about the different type of pandemic throughout the history of humankind. The number here is of course outdated. If you look at the infographic on the left hand side, this one is actually from Visual Capitalist website. They usually create a very good infographic to depict various topic which is current. So if you look at this infographic, the biggest pandemic was the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death in the 14th century, claimed 200 million lives. So the number here is actually the number of deaths caused by this pandemic. This one, I believe there is an error. So when they stated here 2.7 million, I don't think this is the number of death. This is probably the number of infection back in March 16. Oh yeah, I think this is correct. Sorry. So this is 2021. This is correct. So if you compare to the statistic by world meters, this one is actually updated on daily basis. So as of today, it is actually 2.8 million deaths, which is correct for this infographic as well. So this was 2 weeks ago, middle of March. So the number of deaths currently for COVID is among the top 10 with regard to the history of pandemic over the course of time. So very interesting actually. So it might reach probably number 4 or number 5 in due time, unless we can fully vaccinated the population. Another infographic which depict what happened on the left hand side is the cases, probably not of interest to our talk, but what I want to focus is actually the infographic on the right hand side. This one is actually from Malay Mail. The link is at the bottom left of the screen. Once you get the slide, you can visit this website for you to get more information. So what I want you to look at, if it's too small, I apologize for that, is to look at 2020. So the first MCO, March 18, and you can see on the far right is the restriction. So the one in the middle with the graduation head depict the education system. So the first MCO, school were closed, everybody were forced to stay back at home. And the ministry decided that school session has to go on and everything moved to the online session. So that goes on for almost 1 month plus, and then there were CMCO, but still the school are closed. There was a bit of respite in the middle of June last year for a few months before we come back to the CMCO 2.0, whereby the school was closed again. And that has been going on until now. So the primary, someone would like to say something or? All right. So the primary school has been open, and I think the secondary will open after this 1 week holiday. We are on our caution actually, if in case there are spikes. So if you look at Kuching or Sarawak, I think the cases for the past few days have increased to 400, 300. Not sure whether the school will open back again after the school holiday. So we see how it goes. So let's look at the stakeholders. So our focus today is, of course, the online teaching and learning. If you look at the ecosystem, student, of course, the one affected, educators, this one across all the levels, whether the school teachers, the kindy teachers, the lecturers at colleges and university, government as the policy maker, either at the ministry level or at the state level, the JPNS and MESTER. Parent for sure, another big factor in the ecosystem, and later we'll discuss how this actually affect parent. Others include the economic sectors actually. So when the school are closed, the one that are affected are the school bus operator, the canteen operators, who else, and various other parties actually. Even the supplier for textbook complained that their business has gone down because probably the parents withhold of purchasing books and so on. And then even the school uniform, when I went around and asked the supermarket whether the sales for their school uniform and school shoe have dropped down, and the answer is of course yes. So others include various parties, especially in the economic sectors. Yes, but for sure, yep. Those are the famous brand. Huh? So after we look at the scenario, let's look at the challenges actually. So this is probably the most important part of the talk today. And this is where we want you to share your experience, your issues, and so on. Now, another disclaimer that I forgot to mention, the session is not to point the blame to anybody. I think when we talk about the challenges and the opportunities with regards to online teaching and learning, we are also responsible in this story, so that we can somehow assist. And when you look at the stakeholders, the one that is, of course, the concern is our children, the students. They are the futures, and we have to do our best to make sure that they get the knowledge that they should get. So let's look at the challenges. So the picture depicts, I would say this one goes back to October last year. I think the CMCO 2.0. When schools were, prior to CMCO 2.0, when schools were reopened and we had children went back to school, and I think the government have done the right thing. We don't see a lot of cases at school during that time. So all the procedure have been taken, the SOP and so on. There was pocket of outbreak in certain school, but those are external cases that have been brought to the school by maybe the parents and so on. Oh yeah, the poll question. Thanks, Rosalind. Did I miss any poll question, Clarence? Oh yes, this one, Clarence. Can you put the poll for this one? When the MCO was announced, can you answer this poll question? Throughout the talk, there'll be some poll questions so that we can get response to this. So the question is, when the MCO was announced last year, what was your level of readiness to adopt online learning and teaching? So basically probably as parents or as educators. I guess we can guess the answer. Majority would say that they are not ready. I think we were caught by surprise. So just to share while waiting for the polls to end, when the first MCO was announced, 18th of March, I was back in Semenanjung for school holiday. And when an MCO was announced, I think the first reaction was jumping with happiness because the school is closed, not knowing that it will be closed for the next few months. Of course, we were not ready, but I think the mood of during that time was a bit of relief, I guess. I'm not sure from the student point of view, but as a parent, it's just a matter of extending the holiday for another few more weeks. Okay, Clarence, we can end the poll. So 51% mentioned that you are not ready, which is yes. I guess that's the right answer from most. Huh? Thanks, Clarence, and thanks, Rosalind, for reminding me. Now, this is a very interesting article. Again, when you get the slide, you can visit the article to get the details from this article. So this article was arguing about the decision to close the school. This one from the perspective in US actually. So probably we know that US, they are a bit of lackadaisical when it comes to curbing the spread of the pandemic. But the point that they mentioned in the article is interesting. So they have pro and cons. And this quote taken from the article, it mentions that what's more, school must weigh any potential benefit of closure with a slew of other factors. Of course, the closure of school, plus all the other sectors as well, the main objective is to curb the spread of the disease. But at the same time, the article mentioned, are the parents ready to take time off from work in order to assist their children at home? Whether children who depend on school meals. I think in Malaysia also we have quite a number of children that depends on the school meal to get healthy food supply. So when the school is closed, they are cut off from this food supply, and this definitely affects them. Might sound as a small issue, but I think for some of the families and for these children that depends on the food supply system, this is probably a matter of, I would say, life and death to some of them. And the last one is how long is the facility should be closed. So there are always pros and cons, and the government in various at the various level also have considered this question. When they want to close the economic sector, they have to balance between keeping the people safe from the spread of the pandemic, or to look into the effect to a lot of people in terms of economics, salary, wages, and job opportunity. So another poll, we have around 8 questions for the poll. Clarence, the third question, a year after MCO. So the previous question was the first MCO. So a year after MCO, is your level of readiness now is the same, you would say, or better? Are you much more ready, be prepared? So let's say next week they say school is closed for another 3 more weeks because the cases in Sarawak has reached around 400 or 500. Are you ready or is still the same? So the answer is interesting. So after a year, I think there is a shift. I would say now is close to the majority that are quite ready, which is good. Another few more seconds, Clarence. All right, so on screen, hopefully you can see this. 38% mentioned that they are quite ready, 15% very ready, and moderate ready. So if you sum up all these 3 categories, moderate, quite, and very, you will see that this is the majority. So that is interesting. So after a year, the majority of us is more ready to online teaching and learning. So if you look at online teaching and learning, you need these 4 elements. And this is not an exhaustive list. There are other factors and components, but I would say that these are the 4 components, and we will talk about this in detail later on. So just forgot to mention, time management wise, we try to limit the talk to 1 hour so that we have half an hour for question and answer, and also for sharing your thoughts and opinion about this as well. So let's talk about infrastructure, equipment, content, and instructor. If you think that there is something else that is very important for online teaching and learning, please put that in the Jamboard, or you can put it in the chat box. So the 4 components is infrastructure, specifically on the connectivity, and then the equipment, the content, and finally the instructor. So if you look at the various level of education, as what I have shared just now, from early education to higher education, and when you compare that to the 4 components that we need for online teaching and learning, then we'll see some interesting correlation. So let's look at each one of these in details. Infrastructure, I guess this is probably the biggest challenge. The far left, Viviana, I'm sure everybody has read about her story. I think she's the one that bring the issue about connectivity and infrastructure to the limelight. And in Sarawak also, we have a lot of similar stories as well. So after Viviana's story has been posted, then we have a few other stories from Sarawak. And that is not something unusual. I mean, we talk about Sabah and Sarawak, and those that have experience to be in the rural areas, either for teaching purpose and so on, then you understand the challenges. So infrastructure is one of them. And this is not something easy to solve because it relates to cost. If you map this to the current Sarawak Digital Economy Blueprint Initiative and also SEAC 2030, this is probably one of the fundamental challenge when you want to embark into digital economy, when you want to embark into online teaching and learning, you have to have connectivity, aka infrastructure. It takes time and it is very costly. So just to give you some examples, my number here probably is not accurate. If you are from telco or from any agency that have the right number, can you probably share in the chat box? So if you want to set up one tower, there are various types of tower. probably the cost of land acquisition to erect the tower itself is in the range of $500,000 to 1 million. But it doesn't stop there. So once you erect the tower, you need to get the telco to come in. Telco will only come in if there is return of investment. You cannot blame them. That is their objective to operate as a business. They are answerable to the shareholder, they are answerable to the investors and so on. Even though under the MCMC guideline, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, a population with minimum of 50 people should have access to connectivity. But 50 packs for a telco to set up a service within a tower is not profitable. So that's the challenge actually. So somehow someone has to get in order to either subsidize the tower and then subsidize the connectivity for a long period of time. So this one probably need to involve various parties to solve this, and we can talk about this in the last chapter. So infrastructure is about providing connectivity, and there are two challenges. One is time. It takes probably a year or maybe less than that to erect the physical tower, and then you have to get the telco to come in to provide the service, and that translates to cost. If you look at this report from MCMC, this one is quite recent actually. As of last year, 2020, they provide this infographic on yearly basis about the number of internet users and so on. So for 2020, the number of internet users looks positive, 88.7% throughout the country. But I forgot to screenshot another infographic that shows the difference between the urban areas and the rural areas. So that number is 70-30. So at the moment, the penetration for internet for the rural areas throughout Malaysia is around 30%. So you can do the quick math. You can look at around 30% of our student population that doesn't have connectivity. Based on our experience at UNIMAS, we have been offering online teaching and learning 100% for the past 2 semesters due to COVID. We do survey at the beginning of the semester to check each one of our students whether they have connectivity and equipment and so on. So the number tallies actually. We probably have 30% of the students that do not have connectivity at all or with very limited connectivity. So out of 100 students, we have 30 students that do not have access. Next one is equipment. Clarence, next question, please. What is the primary device? So you as a parent and educators, probably you can share the poll. What is your primary device to access the online teaching and learning content and session? Is it through desktop, laptop, tablet? If you are using multiple, decide which one is probably the most prominent within your household or maybe at your workplace if you access any online and teaching content. So this number is good. We actually have some theory about this. I personally theorize that mobile phone is probably the most popular platform, but having this number is good. As I mentioned, SDI can pick the numbers and prepare maybe a short policy paper to suggest to the government on the next course of action. So we have 50% at this point of time is using mobile phone as their primary device to access the content. Second one is laptop. Third one is a desktop, and last one about the same with desktop is tablet. So quite interesting. Mobile phone and tablet, I would say the price point, if you look at the price point, you can get a tablet, a cheap one, probably around 150 to 100 ringgit with bigger screen areas compared to a mobile phone. But I guess the reality is we use whatever that we have within our household in order to access the content. So this is another challenge actually. I'm not sure whether we fully understand the challenge for some of the household. For those that are capable, you can get individual device for your children, either tablet, computers, even smartphone. But we know that in a lot of community, especially in the rural areas, let's say you have 5 children and you only have one device. Sharing device is not possible because the classes are in parallel for different years of study. So we know that there are students that have to miss classes because either there are no devices at all or they have only one device per household. So this is actually a big challenge, and later during the opportunities, we can share some thoughts about how we can solve this issue actually. Next one is content. Going back to infrastructure. If you look at the bottom part, I actually put the level of education with regards to the components so that we can see which sector of education is affected most. When we look at infrastructure and connectivity, sorry, I have to go back again. We have to look from the provider point of view and from the consumer point of view. Consumer is, of course, the students. The provider are the institution, either university, colleges, and the schools. Now, for higher education and maybe post-secondary, the Asasi Foundation and Matriculation, we have been providing online teaching and learning for quite some time. Most private colleges and also university, either public or private, I think we have embarked on online teaching and learning for the past 15 to 20 years through learning management system and also through connected colleges and campuses and so on. So pre-COVID, when the students are on campus, we have embarked on different concept of teaching and learning. Maybe you have heard about the concept of blended learning. So blended learning, let's say you have 14 weeks of lecture, you can create videos for certain weeks. So you ask the student to go through the videos and then you can go to face-to-face session to discuss. So blended learning, flipped classroom, those are almost similar concept. So we have been doing that for the past 10 to 15 years. So when we shift to the online medium 100%, the shift is not that difficult. So from the provider point of view, in terms of connectivity, all the colleges and university are connected. So there is no issue. But the issue is on the receiver side, from the student side. As I mentioned, even at university level, 30% probably don't have access to proper connectivity and infrastructure. Equipment from the provider point of view is the same. When you look at the lecturers and also the teachers, when we shift to 100% online medium, of course, we have to use our own devices as well in order to deliver. But on top of the equipment, we also have to have other things. So you need to have a headset, you need to have a webcam and things like that. Sound trivial, but those are the things that we have to look for when we actually embark on online teaching and learning. Content is the same story. Let's look at the various level of education. When you look at the content, I think for the, let's talk from the higher education post-secondary. As I mentioned, at higher education level and post-secondary, we have migrated to learning management system for the past 20 years. So everything that a student needs has been posted to an online learning management system, whether lecture note, tutorials, lab exercises, submission of assignment. So everything is done through a single stop portal. So it's not really a big issue. So shifting to online medium 100%, just a small step for the student and also for the educators. But for the school, I believe for most of the teachers and the student, engaging the content through online medium is probably a new experience. So you have to create content, either slides or videos and so on. You have to share them on the platform. I believe the ministry use Google Classroom for most of the activities. And as what Rosalie mentioned, there are various video conferencing software. So now we are familiar with Zoom, we are familiar with Cisco WebEx, we are familiar with Google Meets, and we are familiar with Microsoft Teams. So those are the 4 platforms plus some others that you might use from time to time. For us, when we started the full online teaching and learning a year ago, there was a bit of confusion because when in the beginning we let the lecturer choose their platform actually. So then some lecturer prefer to use Zoom, even though the free Zoom is limited to 45 minutes, it's still usable. Unimas subscribes to Cisco WebEx, and then we also have access to MS Team because most university subscribe to the Microsoft 365 platform, which include MS Teams. And Google Meet, I think if you have an account, you can use that as well. So there are pro and con in terms of the number of participants, whether you can have a breakout room, the style and so on. But a few weeks after that, then they were complaint from students because there are so many different software that has been used. So we standardized to one single platform, which is Cisco WebEx. So every university and colleges probably have their own preferred video conferencing software for the purpose of online teaching and learning. And there are various ways to do that as well. When you talk about content and how to deliver the content, you can do it asynchronously, whereby you put the content into the platform, either Google Classroom and so on, and let the student access the content at their own time. So this one is beneficial to those without proper access, and maybe those that do not have access and need to go to, let's say, the Pusat Internet to get content and so on. Another form is, of course, the synchronize, whereby you go into a session at a specific time for a specific duration. So various measures that we do is to record the session and upload the content to the platform for the purpose those that cannot attend the online face-to-face session or those that have limited connectivity. So coming back to the discussion just now, for content, I think it was a challenge for the teachers in order to translate the content into the form that is easily shared and accessible on the online platform. And then we talk about the training as well. The educators trained to translate the content into digital format and how to share the content and so on. We have to be careful about privacy and also copyright so that you don't just copy and paste content from various sources without acknowledging them and so on. So there were a lot of challenges actually with regard to content. And the last one is with regard to instructor. When the announcement for school closure last time, back in 2020, 18th of March, the first MCO, I believe the state of readiness for the instructor across all levels varied. As I mentioned, maybe during for the higher education sector, the transition is not that difficult, but for the teachers, we can see that there is lack of training, not the fault of the teachers. As I said, this is not about blaming any parties, but to shift to a new medium within a short period of time is a big challenge. Because I've been involved in this for quite some time, and we know how much time required actually. So just for your information, if you need to create a video content, a 1 minute video is translated into 2 hours of work, recording, preparation, post-processing and so on. And I'm not talking about movie quality kind of content. It's just a normal quality of recording. If you're talking about movie quality content similar to MOOC, the massive open online courseware quality, then you're talking about 1 minute of video equivalent to 10 hours of work. So there's a lot of work involved in terms of preparing the content and so on. But you can see the effort taken by the ministry and the teachers. You have seen stories about teachers go beyond the normal of duty to prepare photocopied notes and material and send them to individual homes and villages in the remote areas across the country. So you have to give credit to them, to the teachers, educators, and also to the ministry for the effort they have done. It's not perfect. I don't think you can prepare for this within a short period of time. What we can do is to learn from this, assuming that something like this might happen again. When I show the history of the pandemic just now, this is once in a lifetime occurrence, I believe. but we are not sure yet how long it's going to be for this round of pandemic. I don't think there is anything like this before this. And if we are lucky, not in our lifetime. Maybe our children probably experience another pandemic, but hopefully this is the last one for us. Now this is interesting. This is an article from Time Higher Education, and the author David Kellerman is quite a prominent figure within the education sectors, commented about whether educators are supposed to be content creators. So just sharing, for us lecturers, when we migrate to the online platform, we do everything. So in terms of the content, yes, you have to record your own video. Slide, of course, you have to prepare the slide, and then you have to do the marking and assessment. So from A to Z, that is part and parcel of our job. So when you have to create content, video-wise or audio-wise, as I mentioned, it takes a lot of prep time and processing time and so on. So when you do the math just now, 1 minute of video, you have to do 2 hours of work. That is a lot of work. And then this article talk about or some school of thoughts. When you create content, video content, you shouldn't create a 1 hour content or 2 hours content. The idea is when we are dealing with the millennials, if any of you are millennials, I'm really sorry. We have to cater sort of, quote, millennials have short attention span. So the video that we create shouldn't exceed 5 minutes at most, or the suggested one is 3 minutes. So you need to create videos in a block of 10 minutes to cater for the millennials, just because they have short attention span. And so on. So if you have time later, you can have a read at this article. So this article question whether educators should be burdened on creating the contents. So other issues. So this is probably the interesting one, and this is where you can contribute. There is one question, but hold to that question, Clarence. Don't post a question yet. Let's go through these issues first, and when we go to the issue about the poll, then I'll prompt you, Clarence. Let's talk about conducive environment. So online teaching, children are at home, and whether that is a conducive environment. In some households, yes. But I will say and argue that in the majority of households, home is not a conducive environment, especially when you have a lot of children. I would like to share experience from our side at the higher institution levels. When the student went back home, and maybe some of you have children at this age group, 17, 18, up to 22, 23, whereby they are actually at university and colleges. Now, when the students are at home, what happened is, in some household and family, they understand that studying at this level is like a full-time job. So you have lectures at various times, you have tutorials, you have lab sessions, you have assignment to do, you have discussion group, you have revision, and so on. So your kids most likely will have to spend a good amount of their daily hours to prepare and to do assignments. I would say it's like a day-to-day job from 8 to 5. Now, some household, and this is shared by my students and our students, the house is not the best environment. Let's say you have 5 siblings and you are the eldest, and your youngest sibling is 3 or 4 years old. As the eldest, you are required to take care of them. If both parents are working and all the children at home, of course, the eldest have to take care of the burden of taking care of the siblings. That's first. Second, in some household, you are required to share your workload of maybe cleaning the house, preparing the food, and things like that. In some household, you are expected to help your parents. So let's say your parents are working, maybe doing labors and things like that. Because I personally go through that experience. My mom did catering last time. So whenever I go home during weekends or during holiday, I do help around. So wake up 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the pasar borong to buy the fresh produce, to do the preparation for cooking and so on. So you have to do that actually. So the point is, the home is not probably the best environment for your children to stay. And some parents are understanding. And some probably do not know the burden of studying at that level, even at school level as well, and so on. So it creates a disharmony, I would say, based on the sharing from our students. So that's why some students prefer to come back to the university for that purpose. Second is on managing the expectation, actually. This one, I apologize if this one probably touch on a sensitive issue. When our children are forced to stay at home and engage the teaching and learning activities through online medium, I think some parents become concerned actually. What happened to the performance of their children, whether they are getting the sufficient knowledge and so on, especially those that are attending their public formal exam like SPM, PT3 and UPSR. Some parents start to blame whether teachers are doing enough, educators are doing enough with regards to providing the best education to the children, and whether their children will get good grades. But if you look at the expectation, what is the root cause of the problem actually? When we talk about our children, our kid performance, where does this high anxiety and stress comes from? So our path in life is detected by, at the school level, you have to get good grades, how many A's that you get, because you need to go into, let's say we start from UPSR, year 6. You need to get good grades in order to get good schools at secondary level, either boarding school or good schools. And then you go into PT3, you need to get good grades so that you can choose either to go into the science stream. Even now there is no streaming, but when I see at the grouping, it's almost the same. So you want your children to become doctors, engineers, all those good profession, nothing wrong with that. But in order to do that, they need to do well at school. And then we go to Form 5, they need to get good grades in order to get into good university or to get into institution of higher learning. And then when they are at university, they are required to get good CGPA because the industry or the company is looking into paper qualification. I know this has been discussed quite extensively. Maybe within our Asian context, paper qualification is still an important aspect of life. So we strive to that because we have gone through that. In order for us to get a good job, you need to get a good grades, and then that trickle down to the expectation at school level. So later when we talk about opportunities, is it possible possible to manage that expectation? Let's discuss this in the next chapter. Time-wise, now it's 3 o'clock. I'll take another 15 minutes, Rosalind. And then related to the last issue, not the last issue, I have another one more issue, if time permits. How this impact on our student performance? Clarence, can you post the poll and see whether this is actually something serious? Are you concerned that your children's academic performance will be affected by the online teaching and learning at all? Well, I would probably lying if I tell you that it's not really a concern, but in my household, maybe the pattern is the same. Usually the father is not that concerned. The job is thrown to the mother to become the bad party in the family lah, to be concerned about the academic performance. I'm not sure whether that is a norm, a social norm, whereby the male, aka the father, is not really concerned about the performance. It's a motherly thing, or I don't know, maybe you can share that in the Jamboard. So hypothesis wise, yes, very concerned. I think the majority. You can share later, or you can share through the Jamboard, whether this concern is related to the issue that I mentioned just now. You're concerned about your children performance so that they can get good grades, get into university, get good result, and ultimately get a good job upon graduation. Okay, Clarence, I think we can stop the poll. Thank you very much. So majority is very concerned and concerned. Now, last one, the burden of online teaching. I think from the reading that we have read through various platforms, social media, the news, the mass media, and so on, one of the issue is that the burden of teaching seems to shift to the parents due to the online learning. So this is the scenario. Again, if you're educators, I'm sorry because I'm educator as well. So the sentiment is that teachers post homework in WhatsApp group. So if you have 5 children, you have 5 WhatsApp group. You have 1 children taking 5 different subjects, then you multiply it by 5. So you have around 20 WhatsApp group for different subjects. So every teacher posts homework and then post the reading. Please read page 5 to page 10 from the textbook. And at the end of the day, the parents are the one that have to actually go through everything. So I feel that the sentiment is shifted. Parents are feeling the burden that they are the one that have to sort of assist the children. So this sentiment is caused by, first, maybe the parents do not have time. That's one. Secondly, if you look at the syllabus now, it's probably 10 times more difficult than what we have gone through many years ago. Mathematics, for example, there are some questions that I cannot even answer for Form 1 question. So we feel helpless in a way because we don't have the knowledge to assist them. And then we are hard pressed to make sure that all the homework is done before the next day. So day in and day out, you have to do that. So that's why when the ministry announced that the school is open again, I think a lot of parents breathe a sigh of relief, I guess, because of some of the issues that I mentioned just now. So if you have other issues, feel free to share in the Jamboard. We can try to talk about that later. This one, I will not go through this. This one is just to show to you the benefit of online teaching and also the disadvantages. And the next slide is talking about the benefits and disadvantages of online. This one, everything makes sense. I will probably pick one of 2 of these in the next slide. What I want to raise is actually this. Now, if you look at the aspect for education, content-wise, yes, you can shift that online. Shouldn't be a problem. I think you just need time and maybe training for the educators to shift the content to online platform and for the student to be able to access that. Of course, we talk about the issue of connectivity, but that also is solvable. In terms of the educators, again, that is something solvable. We can provide training to the teachers, educators, and so on. Devices, equipment, again, solvable. Again, it's related to cost, but again, it's something solvable. And just now, instructor, yes. Connectivity, yes. Content-wise, yes. But one thing that my personal opinion that we cannot emulate or duplicate is this. This mentioned, what do you remember most about your school time or university time? I don't think you will tell me that you remember a certain theory or you remember how your teacher taught you. I think the thing that you remember most is the experience that you have gone through. Whom were your best friend? Whom was the crush? What food that you ate at the canteen? All those experiences actually. Being bullied or something like that, even though it's not probably a good memory, but something that you remember nevertheless. So the question is, can you emulate this in online platform? And my personal answer, no. Even though pedagogy-wise, teaching-wise, there are various approach that people are trying to do in order to provide some sense of interaction. But it's not doable actually. When you talk about interaction, there is an element of physical face-to-face context. You cannot emulate that. The sense of smell, the sense of touch, the sense of the surrounding, the sense of sight. So our children are missing those actually. This is the thing that I believe is missing. So if you look at online teaching and education, for example, at institution of higher learning level, distance learning has existed for the past, I would say, 25 years. OUM, Wawasa University, within Malaysian context, I think goes back 10 to 15 or even 25 years ago. So there is no issue actually. But if you look at the background of people that take distance education, are working adult. They have gone through all the social interaction, the experience. They don't need this anymore. But when we talk about especially our school children, this is a very important experience in life. So that's why when you read about the Japanese education system, the first 3 years there is no exam. What they teach is actually about character building. You have to wash the toilet, you have to clean everything yourself, and so on. So you can see the focus is about character building, the social interaction, how you deal with other human beings, and so on. I'm not sure. This is something that you cannot emulate. So the question is, if the online teaching and learning has to go on for the next maybe 2-3 years because of the pandemic, we will see a lost generation, I would say. A generation that I'm not sure. This is something that maybe SDI can do a research 5 years down the road, whether this batch of people that miss probably the physical graduation ceremony, that miss certain things in life, are affected in the later stage of their life. Last chapter, opportunities. This one is Cikgu Ame from Teach for Malaysia Fellow. He received an award, I think, 2 years ago for excellence in teaching. I'm not sure where he is teaching now, actually. I think his last post was in Sabah, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to shift to online teaching, these are the few things that you have to do or have been done. So government should develop a proper action plan for pedagogy during a crisis. This one on paper, I think yes, but to execute it is not the same thing. On paper, yes, I think the government have some policy in place even before the pandemic, what to do if something like this happen. But I guess the reality is not the same. When you have to train hundreds and thousands of teachers within a short span of time on how to use Google Meet, on how to use the Google Classroom, on how to engage the student. Try yourself doing online teaching for, let's say, my number of students per session is around 100 to 150. As I said, without the physical environment, you feel like you're talking to a wall actually. So there is no feedback in terms of the face emotion, the face expression, and so on. It's not a nice feeling to do that for straight 2 hours. And for teachers, they have to do that throughout the day. Second one, increase internet penetration in rural areas. As I said, this is easier said than done. The reality is, no matter what you do, there'll be pockets of community, especially in rural area, that doesn't have access to connectivity. So that's the real fact. I've been privileged to be able to join the Telecenter project by UNIMAS. Maybe some of you know Prof. Elvin, Prof. Hairudin, Roger Harris, Prof. Nara from ECT, the Institute of Social Informatics and Technological Information. We started with the e-Barrio project back in 1999. Was the third batch actually. I went to Barrio back in the year 2001 when they first started the initiative. I still remember watching the Buffalo pull the cart to bring 10 of the compact Presario computer to the e-Barrio Telecenter back in 1999, 2000 actually. And we have been involved with various other telecenter projects throughout Sarawak, in Sabah, and also in Semenanjung. So we have seen first place how difficult it is. And there are various initiatives, the Pusat Internet Initiative under MCMC and various other initiatives, the Perpustakaan Desa and so on. But the reality is it is very costly to develop a telecenter. It's very hard to sustain and there are so many other factors actually. Various parties are working on solution, but both will take time and ultimately it involves cost. So someone have to bear the cost. And most of the time the government is the one that is expected to do so. And the last one, provide devices affordable. This also, I think there are some effort. The free laptop for the B40 group, and I think there are a lot of NGOs that try to do the same thing. But whether we can solve all these that are affected, it will take some time. The motto, nobody is left behind, I think that one is a very reasonable motto by the ministry, and hopefully we can work together to make that a reality. Now for educators, it's a big challenge, as I said, when you want to turn your online classes to something engaging. There are various ways to do that. All the university that I know of, whether private or public, I think the educators and the teachers as well, they are undergoing continuous training on how to engage the student, how to create an environment which is conducive. We use various tools like Jamboard, Mentimeter, we have breakout session, and so on. There are so many things actually. The things that we do, we is referring to all the educators across all the levels, is mind-blowing just to cater for the different shift in paradigm when you move to online teaching and learning. Again, this need time, this need money in order to run the training. It's not easy as well. So the conclusion is somehow our children, including mine, are affected. To a certain extent, we become a guinea pig, either from the educator's point of view, from the student point of view, from the institution point of view, on how best to create and deliver online teaching and learning. You can refer to this document from ITU, an organization that tried to come up with ways to assist various parties to provide what we call as the last mile connectivity. So the issue is always on the last mile. We don't talk about the urban areas or semi-urban. That one is not a problem. So in urban area, you have access to Unify, you have access to Streamix, you have access to the broadband, the mobile provider, and so on. I forgot to mention the challenge under connectivity just now. Connectivity include both access to connection and also at the same time, when you have connectivity, access to the money that you need. For example, as you mentioned just now, a lot of you access the content through smartphone or mobile phone, and you have to pay for that. If you have Unify, it's a flat rate, you pay monthly. But for mobile phone, it's actually based on the amount of data that you use. So the initiative from the government to provide 1 gigabyte of data on daily basis is actually good. But just for your information, let's say you have a 2 hours recording of lecture. on average, even you use the lower setting, 480p resolution, the size of the file is going to be around 300 megabyte. So in a day, if a student has 3 lectures, 6 hours total, then you're going to exhaust that free 1 gigabyte of free internet data provided by the government. That is a big issue. So we know some students probably do not have sufficient funding in order to purchase the credit required to access the content and so on. And we try to help as much as possible. I know some of the colleagues goes to a certain extent to provide data credit to their students. Some again go to a certain extent. I know some teachers actually do that to send USB drive which contain the content of their lectures and so on to students in rural areas. Someone asked about Didik TV. Yes, in terms of solution or opportunities, this actually one of the good solution. I guess the ministry realized this a bit late, but again, it's still a good initiative. I'm not sure how much they pay to take over NTV7. If you have that info, you can share. If you're afraid to share to the public, you can message me directly. Did I miss any more poll? I don't think so. Remind me, Clarence. So Didik TV is a good initiative. So this one solves the cognitive issue in rural areas. It does have a disadvantage whereby you need to slot the content according to the schedule, and the student need to access the content at various fixed time. So you cannot cater for everybody on a single day. So there are scheduled timetable for the content and so on. But overall, it is actually a good solution. Content-wise, we have seen the issue about the right usage of pronunciation, grammar, and that kind of thing. I was made to know that the teachers involved in Didik TV are not paid. They do that on their own initiative. But of course, that's the thing with social media nowadays. There'll be people that always comment, find problem to every single solution. You cannot do anything with this group of people actually. If you look at the Pareto law, don't spend 80% of your time and resources to cater for this 20% of negative people. I think what you can do is try your best, continue on. Of course, you try to improve. Don't get disheartened by comments. You cannot stop people from commenting, as simple as that. Didik TV solved the issue with content. As I said, it's not easy to create content. And also it solved the issue for equipment. You only need a TV instead of devices and so on. It solved the issue of infrastructure because you can use the TV spectrum to share the Didik TV. Equipment-wise, there are various initiatives. As I mentioned, we heard the government is providing 150,000 laptops to the B40 group. There is initiative for university students as well. I'm not sure what's the status, whether it has been actually given to the target group. The last that we know, February, but I don't think so. Because if there is, then you will see big news in the media. But so far, I didn't notice any. If you have noticed any of this, maybe you can share. This one I just came across today. This one is local in Sarawak, Engineers Without Borders. They are running this initiative to get use monitor for the purpose of giving this to needed family to access online learning. You can scan this, or you can contact Amirul if you are interested to donate your used monitors. I'm not sure about equipment. You can try to contact them if you have old laptop or tablets and so on. Now, what's next in the future? People talk about VR. There is an article about the use of VR and AR. VR stands for virtual reality. AR stands for augmented reality. So VR is fully digital. AR is the combination of the digital world and the physical world. Now, what's stopping from this being used in the majority of the target group? First is, of course, the cost of the device. The cost of creating the content is still quite high. And when you talk about the device itself, whereby you need the gadget, the VR goggle, it goes back to the previous issue about accessing the device and equipment. And then connectivity wise, you need better connectivity in terms of accessing the content. So if you have slow connectivity, 2G will for sure not work. 3G, I doubt it will work. You need at least 4G and above. You can see the trend is picking up when you look at the context of Sarawak. Serba Dynamic opened their VR theme park at Kota Samarahan. I think their focus is more to entertainment because they can see there is opportunity in that sector. Under Sentex, they are starting to offer short courses on building VR content by Eon Reality. That one is actually a good solution provider. I'm not trying to promote them, but based on my reading, Eon Reality seems to be a good content provider for the training and also the content itself. I'm sure some of you have seen this, Ready Player One. What is the limit of VR? At the moment, VR only gives you visual perception. I think the advantage, it seems that you are in that environment. But what is lacking at the moment, even though the technology exists, is the sense of touch, the sense of smell. So those two are probably not available yet. As I said, the technology is there. The sense of touch and the sense of smell, both you can actually get, but of course at higher price. The sense of touch, we call it haptic. There are haptic glove and so on. The sense of smell, I've seen a few devices that can create a range of smell. All this is actually trying to emulate the real world as much as possible, actually, or as close as possible. So if you watch Ready Player One, that is probably the ultimate VR that you want to have, whereby it involves all sense of smell, from sense of touch, pain, happiness, smell, taste. I'm not sure, but I think so. Whether it's in our lifetime, maybe if we long enough, we would say probably another 10 to 15 years. Our children, definitely yes. So who knows? There is a snapshot from Archie Comic. I'll try to share after that. I think some of you probably have seen that in the WhatsApp group. Archie Comic back in 1970s, whereby they predict in 2031, children will access online school from their home. I'll try to share after this. This is another one. This one is from Harvard, the Harvard Business Review. I think this is their master class. What they are trying to do is to create an environment for the instructor and for the student as if they are in a physical environment. So everybody can see everybody. So you have to turn on your webcam, and then the instructor can see everybody so that the instructor doesn't feel bored or lonely. Forgot to mention, actually, when you are in online meeting or online class, most of the time we ask the student to switch off their webcam because that will increase the bandwidth. So in reality, you try to get people to switch on their video, but it doesn't work. So the moment you ask 100 students to switch on your webcam, then you can see the performance hits in terms of the bandwidth. What can be done actually? So I would like to come back to my discussion about the issues. The way forward in terms of managing the expectation and making our life in a way livable during this pandemic for the next probably few more months and maybe into next year is, first, we probably have to be a bit flexible, a bit more understanding, and probably have to manage our expectation. I asked myself, what happened if my children doesn't get the full knowledge that they should get at that particular year? As I said, my first child is in Form 1, so probably I'm not worried too much if she miss a bit on how to calculate the what's the theory that she asked me a few days ago? Algebraic arithmetic or something. The second one is in Form 3. To be honest, I don't feel the pressure yet, I guess, even though this is March. And knowing that the exam is usually in September for PT3, my wife's starting to freak out. I think, as I said, maybe that is a motherly thing. So I do a bit of reflection on myself. So if my child miss a year of the study, I'm still okay with that. But how about if it goes on for the second year, the third year, and so on? What did I forget to mention actually? Managing expectation, being flexible, be more understanding. Academic performance. When we were talking about the issues just now, this is from our experience at the university level. One aspect about online teaching and learning, first, of course, is the delivery of the content through lectures and session. The second is on the assessment part. That's why you look at the school system, even though the online teaching and learning still has shifted to the online medium, but the exam is still face-to-face. But for university, for us, for the past 2 semesters, we have shifted the assessment also to the online medium. I guess you can guess the issues or the challenge that we face. How bad is the performance affected? When I say how bad the performance is affected, how do we know that the result that the student get is the true reflection of their knowledge? Because one thing about online assessment, this is not accusing of any parties that they are cheating. One thing that is very hard to control is to reduce the act of plagiarism or copying during exam. Now, just to share how it was done or how it is being managed, the online exam, there are 2 modes of exam. One is what we call as the take-home exam. Students are given a list of questions. They can bring the question home and they can attempt that within 1 week and they have to submit that. So that one is similar to open book exam. So they have access to any references that they want. They can ask anybody. And usually that one is open-ended question, require higher order level of thinking. The second one is either structured question or MCQ or essay, but done through online session. So it is synchronous. So they are given 3 hours as usual. They have to switch on their webcam to minimize plagiarism. They have to sign an act of declaration stating that they will not copy answer from various sources or from their friend and so on. But you can do so much actually. So there is an element of trust that the student do not try to cheat during this exam. But we are still looking at the impact of that. What we do not want is the result that the student get or the grade are very high, but not reflective of what the student capable. So that will skew the job offering later on, and a lot of things actually. So a lot of things is still ongoing, and I think there are parties that have started doing research on that to look at the impact of online session to the academic performance and to the level of knowledge that the student get. That's the end of my talk. Clarence, did I miss any poll? If
Yeah, you missed, I think the last one.
can you shoot that out?
Okay, sure.
So while Clarence is showing the, okay, what are the steps initiative taken to improve your experience at online learning and teaching? These are the choices. Probably you can try to answer this. So while you're answering this, I would like to say thank you very much for your attention. Now is 3:30. We have time for question and answer. There are some points on the Jamboard and there are some points in the chat box as well. Rosalind, I'll pass back to you for you to manage the Q&A session, and I'll try to answer question as much as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. Thank you very much for your sharing. So maybe let us take this poll first. Let's see how the step and initiative taken.
So we give you another 5 seconds.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Clarence.
Okay, let me share the results.
Yeah. So it's devise new methods of teaching and assessments. This is the steps majority the educators or parents will to devise these methods to improve the learning at home. Thank you everyone for your sharing. So now we will go to the Q&A sessions. So in the Jamboard, as we can see, there is a few 3 questions being posed. So I think for the medium on DDIC TV, I think Dr. Joe has covered this one just now. So we will not answer this. So the first one is on the education system. We'll see online remote learning, blended learning as a necessity rather as a stopgap measure. Dr. Joe, you want to share your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Rosalind. As I said, this one for the higher institution of learning and the post-secondary, I think this one will be the norm. It has been a norm before the pandemic. We have been trying to engage students through the blended learning, face-to-face, plus the online medium. I'm not surprised if the majority of the session will be shifted to the online medium. But I personally feel I still prefer the face-to-face for the sake of providing the student with the experience. Again, if you ask yourself what you remember most about your university life, I don't think you will talk about the subject that you have taken, the knowledge that you get. It's always other things actually. Same thing with our student. What do you remember most? They will tell me about the food lah, the canteen lah, their crush lah. And I also remember the best time of my life is during the university time, but not for the study part. I guess the study part everybody hate it, but it's the life experience. For the school, I'm not sure actually. I don't think we will shift to the online platform because the challenges are too great. Because the moment someone is left out, especially those in the rural community, I think the government will not take that risk. So it's back to the normal face-to-face. But what we need to do is to be ready for anything similar that might happen in the future. What I suggest is to include the training on online pedagogy, on how to use the equipment devices at the Teachers Training College and at the UPSI. So this one is for the teachers. For the university educators, we actually have included this in our post-diploma in teaching and learning. So before any lecturers can start teaching, they are required to undergo this training. So it has to be part of the syllabus, and probably it is already there, but it has to be strengthened.
All right, thank you, Dr. Joe. So I think we'll go to the next one, which is many will agree that internet accessibility is a major stumbling block in online educations. So if this was no longer an issue, what would be the next striking challenge for online education?
Well, any of you can help me to answer this. So the hypothesis is that accessibility will not be an issue. If you ask personally, I don't think that's going to happen. No matter what you do, there will be pocket of people in any community that do not have access. 100% internet coverage, I would say it is close to impossible. I mean, nothing is impossible, but I would say that is close to impossible. People have been trying to do so many things for the past 60 years since the beginning of the internet and network. and people are still trying to actually think about it. There is a gap between the usage of the internet and the connectivity speed. So we are talking first about providing connectivity. If you solve that, then you need to look at the speed of connectivity. For example, I think at the moment the best solution for rural areas is of like now satellite connection is affordable. I remember during the e-Bario time, you have to pay 150,000 ringgit to set up the dish, and then every month you have to pay around 3 to 5,000 ringgit for the subscription for 800 kilobit per second. Not megabit, is kilobit per second. So with 800 kilobit per second, forget YouTube, forget what do you call it, podcast, forget whatever that you use for streaming video and audio. What you can do is to scroll through internet website and so on. Now most of our sites are very rich with content. Either they use video and so on. So we are doing catching up. If you have access, but most of the content that you have for education is of recording video and so on, then that's what happened. So if you go to rural areas where they have internet connectivity, then you will experience the slow loading of website and so on. But let's say that the hypothesis is correct. There are no more issue about connectivity. What are the next big issue in online education in Sarawak? If you look at the 4 components just now, infrastructure, we assume it answered that question just now, no more issue about connectivity. Instructor, as I said, that is doable. You can train the teachers to be familiar with online teaching and learning. Devices, again, solvable. So I guess my answer is the same. You cannot emulate the social interaction in online medium. If you can solve that 4 components just now, the connectivity, the devices, the content, and the instructor, you are still left out with one. To me, is very important. But nobody talking about that because I don't think there is a solution. If there is, then maybe years ahead. I'm not sure. If you ask me what is the technical solution for providing social interaction, my answer is no. Even though I'm from a technical perspective, to me, I cannot see the solution yet.
All right. Mr. Richard Goh said that internet traffic is the next issue.
It has been always an issue. It's never enough actually. I'm subscribing to the fastest unified 800 Mbps and I still feel that it is slow. So it's a matter of perspective actually. If you are in rural areas, I still remember when we went to Bario back in 1999, 2000, to see the face of the people, because when we install the internet connection, it comes with the telecom coin operated public phone. You still remember that? When you put the coins? And we saw people lining up in queues just for the turn to use the public phone to be able to contact their family and so on. So what happened? The group went to Bario and talked to the people. If you have connection, what do you want to use it most? So people have been sharing stories about they have to miss funeral, people getting sick and cannot be transferred to the hospital, all due because there is lack of communication. So it's a matter of perspective. When you talk about traffic, to us in the urban areas, maybe we are talking about 5G and so on, but people in the rural community, even having connectivity is actually a blessing. Let me share another story. Maybe you are surprised. You are thinking that connectivity is an issue for Sabah and Sarawak, but it's not true. We had 4 projects under ECT that set up telecenter in Orang Asli settlement in Semenanjung. Called POS. POS, two Orang Asli settlement in Pahang and 2 in Kelantan. That one is under Tipua project, telecenter project for Orang Asli. So the first 2, Pahang there is just 20 minutes drive from Kuala Lipis, POS Sinderut and POS I forgot the other one. And the other one is in Kelantan, POS Bala and POS Gop. Maybe you are thinking video access, things like that. But what we did for them is very simple. For example, post in the road in Kuala Lipis, the nearby Kuala Lipis, their major income is actually durian season. They have good selection of durian, kampung durian. And this is actually a standard story across a lot of places. So they sell the durian to the middleman as usual. So middlemen come from KL. They buy the durian at 10 cents each, bring back to KL, and they are selling the durian for 45 ringgit per kilo. So you can see the price difference, 10 cents per durian. One durian is probably around 1.5 to 2 kilo, and they are selling that for 45 ringgit per kilo. So with the introduction of the internet connection, what we did is very simple. We tell them, use WhatsApp, use Facebook, check the price of durian in KL during the season, and when the middleman come, show the page of the Facebook that you know the price of durian. So with the information, knowledge is power actually. They managed to sell the durian for 8 ringgit per durian, which is a big leap from 10 cents per durian, just for the simple reason having connectivity. So traffic to me is a subjective thing. You have to look at the perspective. With regard to online teaching and learning, you need at least 10 Mbps in order to cater for the online session like this using Zoom and so on, and to cater for YouTube video. Okay, Rosalind?
All right, thank you, Dr. Jo. I would like to pick up Lilia questions now, or this is maybe addressed more to the parents who are joining us today about any changes in the behavior of their children being stuck at home doing online learning. Because based on her reading that some children are affected psychologically and emotionally. So I would like to invite any parents who are able, who would like to share their points or making any comments on these issues. Anyone? Any taker from the parents? Anyone who would like to share?
How about your kids, Rosalind? You have any kids at school?
Yes, I do.
While waiting for the parents to share, maybe they are shy. Maybe share about yours, Rosalind.
Yes. Okay. Okay, I do have 3 or maybe 4 of them doing online learning. So of course, I think they are affected to a certain extent. The older one definitely keep asking when the school will be open because they feel that it's really boring to study at home, no friends, just checking with friends is not the same like what you have mentioned just now. You cannot duplicate that kind of environment at school where they can run, they can laugh, they can jokes with friends. And then I'm also worried that because they are just so much being using device, you see, because they are quite fortunate that we have enough device for each of them. Therefore, for them to switch to like watching YouTube videos, being addicted to anime, watching anime, stuff like that. So I think there is no that stop. You see, whether they are doing online classes, whether they are like the differences between these two. So of course, right now is for us is that okay, they are doing online. They need to know to navigate because initially it's really quite tough because especially on Google Classroom, the teachers will ask us, the students need to do their homework. Sometimes they ask us to print out the assignment, the paperwork, and then we have to take pictures. The students actually need to take pictures, and then they have to upload because it was not digital at first. It was just a like maybe it's a document that was just shared. They cannot like answer it online. It's not a digital worksheet paper. They actually have to print it out first, and then they have to do the paperwork, and then they have to take picture of it. They have to upload it, and then they have to say that it's done. So there is a lot of processes. So definitely, like you mentioned just now, parents studying together. So this is definitely what every parents went through or going through together with children during this online teaching and online learning periods. So for
Yeah,
my
thanks.
younger, yeah,
Your younger one, how?
yeah.
I think the one affected is the younger one. I think the
Yes,
second.
the younger one being so cold at home. So to understand that because he's so used to not going out, so when we suddenly want to go out, so he will be reacting quite have a big reactions lah. Suddenly like going out, So to certain extent, definitely there is because of the changes in the routine, being so used to being at home. So when there's like suddenly there is a need to go out for everybody, so it's something new for the younger children. So I think, yeah, I definitely agree that I mean personally, my children are affected psychologically and emotionally on this.
I think I want to pick up from what you mentioned, and also from Chung Seung Chu just now.
Yeah,
When
Dr. Chu is from Swinburne, so
yeah,
I would like to invite him later on to also share some or two.
yeah, I think when and she asked about making the online and blended a permanent thing in our school system. I can see the point actually. The the factor is time. It can be done. I agree to a certain extent. If we make it a permanent element of the education system, then probably we are not being surprised in the future. But it takes time. I'm sure we all remember, if you are as old as me, when I went to university, the medium is still blackboard. No whiteboard, it's purely blackboard. So what we have to do during that time is to copy and the lecture note from the lecturer into papers lah. And then I also experienced transition to OHP. I'm not sure how many of you remember OHP, the transparent plastic, and then the projectors, and then the lecturer will write on that projectors. And then we shift to whiteboard. And then finally we shift to PowerPoint. But that takes time. So if you expect that our children to switch and our educators to switch to blended learning and so on within a short span of time, doable, but you have to allocate a lot of resources. So there are a lot of factors actually, time, and second one is resources. Yes, Rosalind, maybe other
Yeah.
parents want to share?
Any parents so far is any parents wants to share, you can just unmute your microphones and then you can just let me know. Maybe
Yeah,
Dr. Chu? Yeah, Dr. Chu.
hi everyone. Hey, hi, Dr. Johari. Thanks for the talk. I'm glad that there's quite a bit of it's kind of become the norm already, because when doing your presentation, I can see that a lot of the thoughts are quite common, not just as an educator, but also as a parent. I'm not as prosperous as yourself or as Rosalind, because I only have the one child, and she's in kindy. So, but at the same time, I can empathize with the educators at the kindy level. As a lecturer, again, I salute those teaching at the kindy and even primary school and secondary school levels. Those are very difficult. Contact hours are, it's a lot longer. And what happened in my daughter's school was that they did a bit of blended, meaning that every day there was an online online live session. But I think we took it as an opportunity to kind of teach her about other things. And that's when YouTube Kids comes in very handy. And we expose her to a lot of other aspects, not just maths and the English, and Chinese, but on viruses, on bugs, on various other things. And then and during the online sessions, she become quite engaged with the other students as well. But I can see, that yes, the main thing is that you're never going to be able to replicate the physical experiences. And I wouldn't say just the memories, but also even on an assessment level, things like practicals and labs. I think those are pretty difficult to substitute. It can be done, but you know the children will lose their psychomotor skills and their psychomotor developments, especially you know at the whether it's at the technologist level diploma or even at the professional level. So to do that, you know, if the government really wants to make a move towards online and blended learning, online learning especially, they have to think about this quite carefully. And the other thing is that the other point I wanted to make is a lot of what we're going through now is not really online learning. It's more like remote online learning. If you remember back in the days of, I think about 15, 20 years ago, correspondence learning or learning by mail. And that's what's happening right now. If it is really online learning, it'll be a full day session of virtual activities. And that takes, I wouldn't say just 1 year, you know, a few months to prepare. It takes 2-3 years to prepare. So that's why I think that what's happening now is more like a stopgap measure. But that's just my point as both a lecturer as well as a parent.
Thank you, Dr. Chu. So I just want to acknowledge comments made by Francis from DOM IRI. So I think they are highlighting the challenges that they have lah in the Ulu Lawas so is the memerlukan data lah, so is the data, is the devices accessibility in the rural area. And also from Diana, thank you for sharing your thoughts as a mother who are helping out the primary school children to do the homework. I think this is the norm for all of us as a parents, especially those in the kindy and also in the primary school. Anyone, any more from parents who would like to share? You either can put it in the chat box like this also, or if you want to come online, just unmute and turn on your camera or without camera. We appreciate that. And thank you also for Encik Upi from Jabatan Pertanian Sarawak as well. Your thoughts, your sharings on online learning affected most of the exam classes.
That one is interesting point. If you look at the SPM and STPM generation that take their exam through the COVID years, when they enter university later, whether they are affected as well. This one I'm not sure. This one we have to see first when they come into the university. So there are a few interesting cases now. As I mentioned, we have 2 semesters totally online. So our first year, they haven't stepped a foot on the campus yet. I'm not sure how long this closure will be. If let's say probably it doesn't go to 4 years. In 4 years, then that is a sad story, whereby you go to the university without stepping a foot on the university itself. I hope it doesn't happen. So a few interesting things are happening right now that need further research in order to gather sufficient data. And this data, we can use it as recommendation to various stakeholders on what to do. This one, nobody prepared for this actually. I mean, you can talk about preparing, but going through the experience itself is different. There are certain things that happen according to what you prepared and planned, but there are a lot of things that you have to take it as it goes actually.
Noted on that, Dr. Joe. I think that's given. So we have a few comments from Yvonne, also from Atu. Quite challenging for family who have 5 children studying online, financial wise, and also device, and they also have to use a handphone for online learning. And then also from Mr. Melvin, difficulties without proper guiding on the subject. So it's really hard to explain what was given by the teacher to their children. So this is something that every parents go through as well. It's like what Dr. Joe has mentioned just now, is like for us to guide our children at home, to explain, like we are playing the role of the teacher, secondary teacher, explaining the homework, the content to the student, to the children. And then, of course, it's not just a data problem. Of course, it's the network problems as well. So masalah jaringan. So tidak kuat lah. masih tidak kuat untuk online learning. So this is from Edwin Chan as well. Comment.
I think the challenge is if this thing goes on for a longer period of time, we are widening the equity to education actually. Even pre-COVID, we have disparity between the urban and rural children with regards to education and access to education and so on. But with COVID, the gap is even widened actually. So that's the issue. When it comes to technology, of course, the urban will probably not have the problem, but the rural areas continue to have the problem. So that is a concern. I think SDI can probably pick up on this and conduct a proper research and come up with a policy paper about this. Get expert like Dr. Chu just now to do a proper research.
Dr. We will try, Dr. Joe. I think we have more sharing like from Raymond and for No Alia. I think they are all highlighting their difficulties, their challenges. I think all on the connectivities, on the lack of devices. Yeah. So yeah, when the weather is bad, they cannot connect. So I have to 10 kali reconnecting. So it's like the interrupted. See, you also cannot follow when your line keep dropping. So I think this is the real challenge faced by all the parents in the rural area.
I'm not sure how many parents probably have. I don't want to call it give up. I think at times also we go through that period whereby you couldn't care less actually. Let it be. I think I experienced that a few months ago whereby the stress of monitoring all the homework and everything. But then I told my kids, if you cannot finish homework, it's okay. Let the teachers scold you. That's their job. But if you miss a few homework, as long as you try your best, you cannot finish it, it's okay. So we try to be very strict. Every homework you have to do it. We try to catch up with the kids and things like that. But at some point, I told them, I think it's okay lah. If you miss a few geography or sejarah thing, I don't think your life will be ruined or things like that. I understand. I think from the rural community perspective, providing education is very important because that can be a life changer. That's another aspect to think about it. In order to come out from poverty to get a better life, education is very important. Maybe the issue is, and this has been discussed extensively as well, our education system is assessment based, it's normative actually. People have been talking about the Finnish education system whereby it is outcome based and things like that. Easier said than done. I think a lot of people have visited Finland to look at their education system, Estonia, Singapore, our neighbor, and try to look at how they do it. It's basically outcome based. The idea is there. If you look at PT3, it's actually outcome based, but implementing and executing it is a different story because the background for our country with regards to the population and so on is different from Finland. And Finland has been probably the model. When you go to the Finnish education system, they don't offer subject. There is no geography, there is no mathematics. Everything is project based. So they give you one project. In the project, you have to learn mathematics, you have to learn geography, you have to learn science. So it is outcome based. So that's why we are pressured because we are required, or our children are required to go through the normative process of evaluation. Everything is determined by how many A's that they need to get. If you put aside that equation whereby you don't have to worry about the grades, I think you won't be that stressed, to be honest. I think the stress comes from how they are being assessed and the expectation. I talk about managing expectation.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think every parents now wants the best for their children. Yeah, I think initially because my daughter is one is UPSR and then one is PT3 last year. So then the teacher when I think the ministry announced that both of these exam will be scrapped. So it's like, wow, okay, so don't need to study anymore, that kind of mentality,
Well, it's okay, kan? UPSR, they don't have the exam last year. I mean, life goes on. And they have been talking about abolishing UPSR for some years, but
Correct.
they haven't got the, I would say, guts to abolish that. But I think they have seen UPSR. Of course, it has usefulness to assess achievement, but it's not the end of the story, lah.
Mm.
How about
Yeah.
others? Any thoughts? Any
Yes.
opinion? Yeah.
Anybody from anybody else?
Diana say praying for that to happen. I assume that one is for the exam, is it? Or for the
Yeah.
education system, lah.
To be outcome based, I think, not assessment based.
I'm not sure. It's a big ask, lah. I mean, people have been talking about that for 10, 15 years, 20 years. A lot of factors, political factors, things like that.
Dr. Chu, you want to say something? I see a raised hand there.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that problem-based learning approach is quite a big pedagogical shift, you know. It's a big paradigm shift. And I'm not so sure whether that would also address our current concerns with remote learning, I would say. Perhaps it is a crisis management question, or a more probably even a logistics question. You know, I'm not so sure about the secondary and primary school levels, but one approach, and you know, especially with trying to enforce COVID safe measures, one approach I would think is to stagger the intake of students, or to stagger the number of students who are coming in. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. Perhaps at the university level, you know, you don't have everyone coming back for the whole semester, or you can lengthen out the semester so that everybody comes back, but at a more at a less frequent pace. So instead of every day, it could be every week, or you could have shifts. You know, some come in the morning, some come in the afternoon. I'm not exactly sure, but it's. I think that might be one way. In that way, there is some contact time. Now, I'm not. It's just thinking out loud, rather than looking at this as a technological or pedagogical problem, but perhaps this is more of a logistics and a crisis management problem.
All right.
The one I think some universities are taking that approach. For UNIMAS, we are allowing students that need access to the labs. Basically, those that taking engineering, sciences, architecture. For computer science like us, everything has been done online, and we can do that for the next, I would say, forever actually. But as I said, I don't want them to miss the university life, and that is something that you cannot replace, and very important as well. I always tell my student, you can get all the content that you want YouTube. For computer science, for example, there are a lot of better content from MIT, Harvard, you name it, much better than what I can provide. But what we cannot provide to you is the social interaction, the environment, and so on. I'm not sure. My personal feeling, I still want my student to go through the life at university. And that is not replaceable actually.
Okay, Dr. Joe, we have another questions in the Jamboard.
Yeah.
This is on the as most of the things shift into online, and foreign universities and colleges start offering online courses. What actions, plans, initiatives that local university like UNIMAS would take to remain competitive and sustainable?
This is a sensitive question. I'll talk from two perspectives. One as a UNIMAS lecturer staff, and one as a personal academics. At the UNIMAS level, I can share that UNIMAS are doing a lot of things, and I believe every university, either private or public, have embarked on the same measures. So we shift to the online platform to do marketing, roadshow, and things like that. So instead of the normal face-to-face roadshow, we shift to the online roadshow. But you have to understand the context from public and private IHL, Institution of Higher Learning. For private, getting student is life and death. Without student, they cannot operate. As simple as that. For public university, the main objective is to provide education. The bulk of the cost is absorbed by the government, but So finding student is probably not the main concern. Even if the number of students reduce, the public university has still to go on, and for the sole purpose of providing education. Public university and colleges is different story. So from UNIMA's perspective, a lot has been done in terms of trying to offer courses through online. So for the master program by coursework, all the program has been offered online since 2 semesters ago when the MCO started. For the undergraduate, yes, we shifted to online platform as well. So no issue with that. We are not trying to compete with distant learning like OUM or Wawasan, but try to maintain that our students still get the best education that they need, and we still be able to provide the human capital required by the nation. So yes, the initiative is there. Answering this from personal perspective, to maintain the quality of education and access and equity to education is not easy. I mean, the things that we talked for the past 1.5 hours about connectivity, about content, about devices and so on, there are students left out no matter what we do. So I would say out of 100 students, there would probably around 5 to 10 students that are left out for various issues like connectivity and so on, even though we try our best, sending the USB. So we start to see an increased number of students that have to pull out from the system, either voluntarily or involuntarily. Involuntary meaning that they don't get the required CGPA in order to maintain at the university. Voluntarily because of, I would say, economic factors. And okay, Rosalind, hopefully that answered the question.
Thank you, Dr. Joe. I think we maybe take one last questions, or maybe before that, maybe I would like to invite anybody from the education departments joining us today. If you maybe if there's anybody from the education departments, maybe can have some sharing with us as well on this topic. Any takers? All right. If there's no, I think maybe any more last questions from the participants? Any more sharings? All right. I think if it's not, then maybe I would like to invite everybody for a group photo. Maybe you can turn on your camera for a while, a short while. Let us take the new norms group photo through WhatsApp. Through WhatsApp.
Maybe they touch up first, they touch up my hair.
Unmute. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Those who are able to turn on the camera, please turn on your camera. Let us take a group photo. So keep your smile on. Because there are still quite a number of us, about over 200 of us. So I think you'll take
Yeah, just keep on smiling. I'll snapshot one by one, yeah, page by page. One, I have 9 pages. So keep on smiling.
Well, the picture is being taken. If you cannot download the slide, you can download from SDI website later, Rosalind.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Or you can email me or WhatsApp me if you want direct. Yeah, no problem.
Can email SDI as well. We'll try to upload it in our website as soon as possible. So it's okay for those who have no camera. It's okay. We understand.
Alon, keep on smiling.
Make sure ada SOP ya, nanti 10,000.
Yeah, this is for those yang joining us through group to
Yeah, 3 more pages.
Hey, Dr. Raymond is there, I think. Dr. Raymond is
Dr.
from,
Raymond.
from Master, if I'm not mistaken.
Perhaps Dr. Raymond would like to say anything later. Is that Dr. Raymond?
Not sure, I guess.
One last one.
Or maybe not. All right.
Okay, done.
All right, thank you everybody. Once again, I would like to thank Dr. Johari for his sharing today. I believe all of us have gained quite interesting informations, and I think I would like to thank all of you for your sharing as well. So keep up the good work as parents, as students, and as educators. With that, I will end the sessions. Thank you. I hope to see you in our future events. Take
Thank
care
you.
and
Bye-bye.
keep safe. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.